Welcome to episode number 3 of our Valle podcast. Today, our guest, we're extremely honored to have her with us. She's a Valle ambassador. She's a 2-time gold medalist, right? For the junior national team, I believe, in 2017. Also a Pan Am gold medalist in 2023. University of Washington legend softball player, Baylee Klingler. Thanks for being with us.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited to have you. I want to kind of start with, so this is your second kind of full off season from playing pro ball, right? And I don't know if it's a little different than your off seasons with college ball, but like, what does your off season look like right now?
Right now, I'm really just getting to know my body more. I think kind of because like you said, this is my second year. So going into this past season, I kind of was understanding like, okay, well, next season I need to do this. Next season I need to do that. Because it's kind of trial and error because there's no one holding your hand, telling you what you need to do, telling you what works best for your body. So you kind of have to figure it out. But right now, a lot of just mobility, anything to like keep my body healthy because it's a long off season. It's like 9 months. So I'm not hitting it too hard right now, softball wise.
Yeah.
But
Is anyone did anyone kind of give you some recommendations, or is it kind of all by yourself? Like as far as like those things you're talking about, mobility and flexibility, was anyone kind of like, hey, Baylee, this is my 6th off season. This is really what you need to be doing. Like, has anyone kind of been giving you advice, or is it more just you starting to know your body a little bit more?
it's kind of a good mix. I mean, everyone is so different. Like a lot of girls have full-time jobs, so their workout routine is different than someone like some people work at training facilities so they can have that access. So everyone's kind of different. I think people for sure, regardless of what they do, they say like once you get through your first season, like without anyone like holding your hand, whatever, you figure it out, you'll kind of understand more. So it's kind of personal to you, but yeah, it's been a journey for sure.
Are you like ramping up hitting? Like, is there like kind of a stage thing that like you're like, hey, at this point I'm going to start ramping up more of softball skills? Right now it's just kind of get my body recovering from a full season. How does that kind of look for you?
Yeah, right now it's for sure about the recovery. Not that, I mean, it was a 7-week season, so it wasn't like overly hard on my body, but just kind of recovering and taking a breath from softball. Yeah. Just a lot of Pilates, spin, cardio. I'm about to start strength training again to like get that going. But even then, I'm going to do like 2 or 3 times a week and nothing too crazy, like just maintaining until I like hit it hard.
When you start going with like with your hitting again, will you work with like a hitting coach? Do you have a guy? Like, is there like someone that you've had over the course of the years, or is that kind of all on your own too?
This past season, it was all on my own, but I'm for sure moving forward, I'm going to like figure something out and get some good connects. Cause I'm also like such a hitting nerd with like mechanics and things like that. So I know what I need to be doing, but hearing different advice and expertise is amazing. And I like more information than less. So yeah.
Did you, like growing up, did you have a hitting coach?
My dad and
Your
my
dad?
travel ball coach.
Okay.
And then as I got into college, Coach Tar was very much, she's kind of similar to me, like a hitting nerd. And we could just talk about hitting for forever. But
in your opinion, I've always wanted to ask this to like a pro softball player. Is there a difference between a baseball and a softball swing?
Mechanically, I don't think there's a difference. I think there may be more time for like separation in baseball. I think that's maybe where people think they're so different, because with softball you kind of have to be more like tight and quick. Well, you still have to be quick in baseball, but I think there's just more time to like get your sequence off in baseball. So maybe that's the perception of people thinking it's different. But
tell me because I've always thought this. I don't know if I could be totally off on this, so feel free to correct me. Like it seems like the load portion of baseball, again, is that's where that time you have more time, whether it be, from the windup or whatever. Like you see a lot of high leg kicks, you see a lot of, and you don't, not that you don't see it ever in softball, but it's less. It feels like everything is quicker getting your foot down in softball than it would be necessarily in baseball. Is that accurate?
100%.
Okay.
But I think it's like also, again, personal to the hitter. Cause like with me, there's times where I'll like start no stride and it's just when I need to get to contact. But, I have like a fairly big leg kick and like I have to create all this timing and sequencing for my swing to get any power. It's just how I've always been. I'm not someone who can just like stand there, swing a bat, and the exit velocity is insane.
Right.
And it's about rhythm too. It's just everyone's so different, which is cool.
Do you when would you do like a shorter stride? Do you do it with 2 strikes? Are you like a 2-strike change person, or like do you believe in a 2-strike approach, or it's kind of like, hey, this is my approach to the whole at bat?
In college, I was very much like kind of cocky, and I was like, dude, you can throw your best pitch and it doesn't matter.
2-strike doesn't matter.
But I would go into no stride if I felt like my sequence was off. And me and Coach Tar were kind of like always on the same page with that. I'm like, look, I don't say this often, I don't feel right. And she's like, just go to, we called it halfway home. And it's just a short
good. Halfway
swing.
home, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool cue.
And then I would just do it, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's like calibrating your swing kind of.
And then you go back once you feel like you're clicking again, once you're in sync. That's neat. For now, talking about your off season, swing, nutrition, how important do you think like nutrition is to an athlete?
Oh my gosh, it's insane. And that's funny that you asked that, because I noticed that a lot this past season. And because in college, you know how it is, you get fed and everything's good. You don't have to think about where your meals are coming from and stuff like that, or preparing them. And this past season, I think I was very much like not eating enough, like enough to live my life, but not enough to be like a elite athlete. Yeah. And I got to AUX, the preseason, and I was like, I feel like a little shrimp right now. Like, I feel like I'm swinging so hard, and the ball's just, I've hit the warning track like 20 times. And so I started like kind of bulking-ish in terms of like calorie intake. And I feel like I got to where like I know now what my body's comfortable at to perform at its best. Yeah. Regardless of like aesthetics or anything like that.
Was it more of like a lack of calories? You wanted to intake more calories? Was it the type of calories you were intaking, or it didn't really matter to you specifically?
Yeah. I mean, obviously I'd like to be, anything I eat, I want it to be like nutritional,
right. Right.
But I think it was just like getting fuel in my body, no matter like what that meant. Obviously, again, I'm not like eating junk food, right. But I very much needed more calories to sustain like games and have that energy.
Do you think that would have changed if you had done that in high school? Because I'm assuming, I mean, very few high schoolers even think of that. I would think, right? If you did that in high school, would that have changed your game even back then, do you think?
I think so, for sure, especially like just thinking back to the weekend tournaments where you're like sweating, and I didn't care about hydration in high school. I was like, that's just something they say, but it makes such a difference, and you notice it. Like what we were talking about, you get older and you're like, I really notice what's going on in my body, and I wish, like I always tell the high school girls that I work with or whatever, like start stretching now, start your hip mobility now, start doing T-spine stuff. And it's crazy too how like nutrition plays such a role in even that stuff. Like if I eat a lot of sugar and then I go to practice the next day, I'm like, dude, my body feels like it weighs so much, and it's just crazy.
Like lethargic almost.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's so true. Yeah. I mean, I think about nutrition and just again, we were talking about in high school, the stuff we used to eat, and just in general, at least for me, not very good or helpful. And I feel like a lot of times, it could be in anything with baseball or softball. It's like as you get older, you have this perspective. You're like, oh man, if I would have known this at a younger age, I could have been X, Y, Z. And we've always heard people say that, but it is true. It's very true. And so like it's helpful. And I think nutrition just goes under the radar for a lot of people. So focused on your mechanics, so focused on your fielding or your hitting, and just improving that. And it's like or even in the weight room, you're lifting. You could be doing that too. I think there's been a higher priority on that in the last probably 10 years than there were in the previous 10 years even before that, I would think. But nutrition, I still feel like is kind of lagging behind, and it is so important, especially for an athlete when you want to perform at a high level. I think another thing is like the mental approach for athletes too. And I think it at a younger age, we don't think about that as much either. Like how do you think like meditation could be helpful for athletes?
Oh, now we're getting going. This is where I love talking about this. I think there was such a big change in my game when I found like my own form of meditation, because I think people think meditation, you're sitting there, you're like, boom, crisscross, like it's a boring thing, which there's some forms of meditation where you're like, dude, this sucks right now, but that's okay. But I think the biggest thing is just like awareness and practicing that. So for me, when I first started getting into like meditation, it was actually like during my hitting sessions. I would go in the cage literally by myself, and like there was a self-feeding machine, and I'd be like, look, I don't care about my swing right now or anything. I want to focus on like seeing the ball and being intentional about like locking in on this one thing. And that's a form of meditation, like bringing all your awareness to one thing. You can bring it to your breath, to whatever it is, just about your awareness and noticing like, well, that swing, I literally wasn't even looking at the ball. I was worried about how my body felt, you know? So I can go on for days, but I think like the mental part is you have to have it to be elite. Like you have to have it to be successful. It doesn't matter what you got going on physically if your mental's not there.
That's interesting as far as the like that type of meditation, because you don't hear people talk about like that type of meditation as far as because people do think sitting, you know, eyes closed and just like, you know, being in space, which is probably fine as well. But like that's more of almost like a visualization thing too, right? That's what you were, and that is so important. I mean, I think I read a story about like Michael Jordan, and someone was asking him like, you know, why he's so clutch, you know, and like, how do you know, always end up hitting these game winners? And he's like, I visualized that ball going through, you know, 25,000 times before that day. He's like, it was just another rep for me, you know, in my head. He's like, he used to just visualize it over and over and over again. So yeah, no, I think that's like so important. Is there, so you kind of started with your meditation that way. Did it progress into other ways, or is that kind of like where it stayed? Is that kind of like your form of meditation first in the softball realm?
Right. It kind of varies day to day, but again, it's kind of like knowing yourself and what you need. Like some days I'll sit, if I feel like, dude, I'm really tired today, I'll just sit for like 20 minutes and just have my eyes closed and just think. And it's okay. I think also another misconception is people think meditation is like, you're not supposed to think of anything, but it's really about like noticing your thoughts and kind of like guiding them a certain way. But yeah, in college, that was for sure my form of meditation. There was no way I could just sit there and just think. But yeah, that's actually cool that you say Michael Jordan said that, because I feel like there was a lot of situations in like games where there was a walk-off or whatever, and everyone's like, how do you do that? Like, that's crazy. Like, no, I'd like train for this moment. I would literally get in the cage and lock in and be like, look, it's the bottom of the seventh. We're playing this team. This pitcher's throwing, and I'm not going to make the moment bigger than it needs to be, because like I know I've out-trained whoever's on the other side of the diamond. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Did what year did you start kind of doing that? I don't know if I might have missed that.
It was, geez, I don't even know what the year was, but it was right before my Triple Crown year and winning Pac-12 Player of the Year. And what's crazy is like you go through it and you're so in the moment that I like honestly didn't recognize that I was like really, really popping off because I was like, this is so fun. It feels like I'm just training every day. Like I'm seeing the ball like a beach ball because I like practice it. You know what I mean? I practice like just looking at only the ball, and that sounds silly, but that's such a loss. Like we all worry about mechanics and things like that. I'm like, no, like, are you like seeing the ball from release to when it gets to you? And just like locking in on that aspect.
When you started to do it, did you kind of come up with, hey, this is something I need to incorporate from stuff you were reading? Like did reading help with kind of taking that journey into like the meditation, the mental side of the game? Like how did you come to that?
Yeah. So at Washington, Coach Tar was very much like into the mindset piece, which I'm thankful for. But we would have meetings, and I don't know if you're familiar with Ken Ravizza, but he was a guy, he's passed now, but he wrote this book called Heads Up Baseball, and it's about like your routines, your breath, your like all these things, all mental, and all baseball and softball oh my gosh, specific. Gosh. And we would read passages from that, and we would go over it, talk about it, and we'd practice our breath, our routines, things like that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's I wonder, did your coach always do that with all her teams? Is that kind of like a part of the culture in Washington? That was kind of something she really implemented?
100%. But I'm really thankful because we would work on it as a team, but it was kind of like take what you want from it. And
right. She wasn't forcing it on you. It was more like, hey, these are some things that I think are beneficial.
Right.
You know, pick and choose what you want to really kind of take for your own. That's neat. So it really was kind of a book that it will through the coach. Yeah. And you're a pretty avid reader, right? We talked about, one of your dreams is to have a library maybe in your house someday. When did you become, so, loving to read? Was that at a young age as well?
No, actually, it was that same year.
This
was like such a big pivotal year for me. But there was just like a random moment in time where I was like, dude, I want to like get off my phone and social media for like, I did a month of like a cleanse, or I like didn't get on any apps or anything. And obviously you have to kill time somehow. So I started reading, and it was just sitting with yourself. And I think that's also what helped with like where I was at mentally in softball too, is because I was like disconnected in like a healthy way.
Right.
But yeah.
Is there a book that, I mean, maybe it was the book you were just talking about. Is there a book that has made the most impact on you?
Man, honestly, I like whenever I read to just kind of escape. So there's a lot of like fiction books that I like.
Yeah.
But there's a book, I think I need to look up the author's name. I think it's Brianna West. I could be wrong, but it's called The Mountain Is You, and it's a super easy read, and it's like just motivational. That's how you would think, but it's not super dense. Like there's not a lot of non-fictional like history and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So to say you grew up in an athletic family, I think would be an understatement of the year. So your father played football, right? University of Houston?
Yeah.
Uncle, University of Houston, also in the NFL?
Yeah.
Your mom, NFL dancer? Your sister, college softball player, and your brother, college football player. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's insane. What was it like growing up in the Klingler household? How competitive?
First of all, my mom's going to be stoked that you just mentioned her, because she is such an athlete, but people always highlight, the football and everything else. She's like, guys, I danced in the NFL. But no, she for sure is amazing. But it was super competitive. Family game nights are intense. And, what's funny is my mom's like the most competitive in the family. And she was the dancer, which dancing is super hard, by the way. Yeah. It's insane. But anyways, she is the super big competitor in my family. Wow. So I think I always watched her, and, everyone wants to be like their mom. Yeah. And yeah,
that's so cool.
She's awesome.
Do you think like having a competitive home environment helped like form your mental toughness, for 100%, softball?
100%. Yes. And I'm really lucky for my parents, because they were always very much like, if you're going to do something, you're going to do it, but we're not going to make you do it. Like, we're not going to make you train. We're not going to make you whatever. If you want it, you're going to go get it, but you're not going to do it like half butt.
So you had the drive on your own. You did. Did you ever play with people that like you could, even if, whether it be friends or your peers, that you knew their parents were pushing them to do whatever, XYZ, whatever it was?
I see it today. Like, really? I see it. I've always seen it, but I think it's crazy because it's just so non-productive. I think it just causes a little bit resentment, and everyone's different, maybe. Sure. I think it's really just about knowing what your kid needs to thrive.
Do you think, like, with the girls you're playing with now, so you're playing with, the best softball players in the world, do you see that common thread of like competitive home environment, not necessarily parents overbearing, pushing, more just self-motivated? Do you see that kind of common theme, or is there a variety in your opinion? I mean, maybe you don't talk about it much, but like, is there a common thread there?
I think so. 100% from the people that I've played with, everyone's kind of mostly similar in the fact that like you grow up in an environment that's like, you're going to have discipline, you're going to have all these things, but we're not going to force you to do anything. Like, if you want it, go get it. And we're going to support you through your journey, but it's your journey. So we're here as a resource and for support. But
that's cool. I think I probably know the answer to this, so just based on our conversation earlier. But how were you as a kid? How did you handle losing?
Dude, I was like unhinged.
Really?
If it didn't matter if I was like on the field, if I was playing with my brother, with what I hated losing so much. Like I would cry.
Really?
I would cry until I was like obviously a little bit older.
Yeah.
But when I was little, I was the most competitive. There's a picture of me. I need to find it and send it to you whenever it's like 4 years old, 5 years old. And I'm like this at the field, like I have this mean mug, and then there's like a picture of frames where I like field the ball and I look up at the base runner and I'm like chasing her, and like this poor girl is like running away, and dude, it's just when it's time to play, it's time to play.
To go.
Yeah.
Did you play Monopoly at your house?
Okay, my attention span is not
Not enough for Monopoly.
Uno though. Uno got
competitive.
Monopoly, I just don't think I've ever made it through a full game of Monopoly.
I think that's probably fair for most people, especially if you're on the losing side of it. It's like,
Right.
well, this game's over. We're gonna go. We're gonna go to bed. So this is actually funny. I want to get your opinion on this video here. Again, you actually already kind of touched on it. You won't be able to watch it, but you can listen to it.
You show me a 6-year-old that loses this weekend in a baseball game and starts crying, and I'll show you a winner. And every parent that goes up to that kid and says it doesn't matter, it's just a game, should be punched in the face.
Oh my gosh.
Figuratively. Entrepreneurship is losing constantly with an occasional win. And I think the biggest reason that we will struggle with entrepreneurship in the next generation is back to grit. We've demonized losing. The reason I stick on 8th place trophies is we are teaching kids that losing is bad.
What do you think about that?
I love that.
That good?
I love that. That sounds like something my mom would say.
Really?
For sure.
Yeah. It's funny because, and as a parent, and as a coach, I guess, like young kids and not handling losing well, and, you're trying to coach them through that. But there is this element of when you're a competitor, and I still feel this way now, losing anything, whether it be ping pong, there's still this part of me, even as an older guy, it's like, there's this part of me that, man, that sticks with me for a little bit. And I think to be good in anything, you probably need to have that. And it's interesting how that reveals itself as a young kid.
Yeah.
If you like work your way back.
That's
It's
so
like,
true.
were your sister and brother like that as well? Were they similar to you? Or were you more competitive than them?
They were for sure competitive, but I for sure got 100% of my mom in the competitive side. I was like, it was going to be everyone's problem in the household if I didn't win. And the other thing too is if you let me win, that was also going to be a problem. Like I wanted to win, and I wanted to win because I beat you, not because you let me win, not because I'm the little sister, not because anything else. Like I want to win, and that's funny. I love that.
I think a lot of times the youngest kid in an athletic family also becomes to the best because one, the older siblings are challenging them at all times, and then there's something to look up to, so there's something to emulate. But I think that competitive in the youngest happens a lot because it's like, man, I just want to beat my older siblings in anything. You know what I mean?
100%.
That's really that's honestly really funny. So let's talk about a little bit of college. So out of high school, we already talked about where your family went. It all Texas-based schools, and so out of high school, you went to Texas A&M. Okay. What was that recruiting process like for you? Were they your number one school choice out of high school, or were there other schools in the mix? Kind of talk me through that.
Right. So honestly, I don't know if I had one dream school. I was like open to any big school.
Sure.
That's just like your dreams. You look up to these big colleges. I was open to anything though. But what's crazy about my recruitment process was there was no rules yet. Like when no age limit. Okay. So I was getting recruited in like 6th grade.
Really?
Like there started to be college coaches would come out, watch me. If I didn't really do camps, which I think everyone should do camps if you want to go to a certain school, but that's just not something I did. So I was always following my siblings around. But yeah, colleges started to come out and watch, and I always played with an older team too, so I think that was also why.
Right.
But
did the University of Houston talk with you? I mean,
yeah,
I would think, right?
That was actually my first offer.
Really? At what age?
I was in 7th grade.
They even offer in 7th grade.
My first offer ever. Yeah, and then.
Do you remember what the offer was?
like percentage.
Yeah. Do you remember like what?
Yeah, it was a full ride.
It was a full ride in seventh grade.
In seventh grade is insane.
How do you even process that as a seventh grader?
I didn't. I was like, I don't even know what this means, but
Yeah.
am I gonna go to Houston? Am I gonna go to U of H? But that was really cool. It was a surreal moment to know that, like, I can play in college. This is so cool. But
were you like, what was the advice from your parents on that? Like, did they not want you to commit? Like, what age did you commit to Texas A&M?
I was in 8th grade.
You were in 8th grade, so a year later.
So
like, what was the advice of your parents in 7th grade when you just get this full ride offer from Houston, a school that your family has a lot of ties to? Was your sister going there at the time, or no?
She was not. She went to Campbell in North Carolina to start off, and then
came back.
She came back, yeah.
Okay.
But I'm really, really, really lucky for my parents once again, because they were like, one, you're not going to commit too early. Like, you're going to, like, obviously I'm not going to pull the trigger in 7th grade at my first offer, but we're going to, like, wait it out, see, whatever. And they also did a really good job of, like, not steering me too far in one direction or the other. Like, I remember vividly, my top 3 schools were Oklahoma, LSU, and A&M. And I told my dad one day, it's funny looking back now, so I'm just going to say it, but I was like, Dad, I really wish that I could go to school at A&M, play softball at Oklahoma, and party at LSU. And I'm like in 8th grade, like, what? Why are you talking about partying? But yeah, so anyways, and once I would come downstairs and I'd be like, I want to go to LSU, my dad would be like, that's awesome. What do you think about XYZ? And try to, like, steer me this way. Not because he wanted me to.
Wanted you to think
He
it
wanted
through.
me, think about all the pros and cons. And yeah, finally one day I was like, I really want to go to A&M.
Did Oklahoma and LSU, being one of the, the 2 of the 3, did they talk with you at a young age as well?
They did.
So
yeah.
they were in the mix, really.
Yeah. So.
Wow. So what made you decide on A&M out of those options, I guess?
Yeah. So I knew a lot of the girls that were going to A&M or already there and playing, like, up in age. A lot of the girls had already committed, so we always called my team, like, the Aggie Express, because like everyone was going to A&M, but that wasn't the reason. That was just a side bit. But it just felt so familiar for some reason. Like, I loved it because it was just like, everyone jokes like A&M's a cult, and it is, but I just loved it. And I still love the school to this day. I was so young when I committed, and I got there and I was like, I don't know if this is where I'm going to thrive long term.
That kind of leads me to my next question. So you played all freshman year there. I mean, you made the all freshman team for the SEC, I believe, right? So it wasn't a lack of playing time or opportunity. What did make you want to make the switch from A&M to Washington? Yeah,
I think there was just, like, such a change in character. You evolve. Like, once again, I was in 8th grade, and I get there, but I think the biggest thing for me was, like, I was so hungry to be successful in college and be on a successful team and grow as a person, as a human, as a athlete, just grow in any way. And I don't know if those marks were getting checked at A&M, so I sat down with my parents and made the decision. And what's crazy, looking back now, I think this is such a full circle story, but whenever I was committed and playing travel ball, like at these big tournaments, obviously there's a lot of college coaches, whenever I would see a Washington coach in the stands, and mind you, I didn't know anything about Washington at all. It was just like a school that I knew was good at softball, but I didn't know anything about the staff, nothing. And every time I saw this coach in the stands, I would get so excited. Really? And I'm, like, committed at the time, so obviously I'm not like, I want to go to Washington right now, because I'm still very much excited to go to A&M, but it's just crazy looking back now. In the back of my mind, I would always get excited. Like, oh my gosh, there's a Washington coach here. When
you decide, okay, maybe it's not the best place for me to develop, or whatever those reasons were, at what point in time of the year when you were at Texas A&M did you decide that? Were you feeling that way middle of kind of the year after first semester, midway through the season, at the end of the season? Kind of when was that timeline, I guess?
It was for sure. I wanted to be where my feet were, so it was kind of like way towards
The end.
the end. But yeah, once I had time to reflect on the season and just how I was feeling, I knew.
How difficult was that discussion with your coach?
Oh, it was scary for sure. I'm lucky that my coach didn't do anything like crazy and didn't shun me. You know,
Yeah.
obviously, like she was disappointed, not in me, just the situation, I guess. But she's awesome. And the portal's scary. I think people think like once you go in the portal, it's all fun and games, but you're like, is anyone going to want me?
Yeah.
Is there like, so it's scary because you just kind of take a leap of faith and whatever.
And once you have that conversation with, because you have to have the conversation with your coach first before you enter the portal, correct?
Yeah.
So it's like you've already expressed that you may no longer want to be there. And then now you're taking this gamble of going to the portal and hoping that a school that you do want to think is a good fit would come along and want you as well. Right. So like, cause if there's not, then I'm sure there's thoughts in your head like, well, then what do I do? Do I go back to A&M and see if the coach will take me back, honor my scholarship? All those thoughts are probably going through that. Is that right?
100%.
That's tough.
Yeah, it was really hard, but at that point, I was like, I just
You knew.
feel this nudge, and I know God's got my back no matter what it looks like, so
Yeah.
I'm going to take the leap of faith.
So you enter the portal, Washington reaches out, I'm assuming. Any other schools reach out? Were you between Washington and another school, or once Washington reached out, you were like, this is where I'm going?
Oh, man, this is crazy because it was just another full circle moment where Washington was now in the mix, and then LSU and Oklahoma.
Oh,
and I'm like,
really?
geez, it's like I did a good job of kind of the same as recruitment process. I made a list of schools that I want to go to because it is a recruitment process.
Yeah, absolutely.
But,
it's like you're starting it all over again.
yeah.
And you probably hadn't done it since you were 7th and 8th grade.
No. It was a whole new animal, but I made a list of schools that I knew I was interested in, and obviously like would talk to other schools, but I also didn't want to like waste anyone's time, and I was open to anything, but I like knew what I wanted. So I would talk to the coaches that I wanted to talk to, and I went on a visit to Washington. I was like, dude, this place is insane. So
What drew you to Washington? Like, what was like the kind of the ceiling factor for going there?
yeah, it was honestly Coach Tar played such a big role in it. She is just like such a badass. She's an amazing woman, and she knows her stuff. And beyond that, she has always created such a team, like family environment within the team. And I knew like Washington is just a kind of a cult in its own way.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
everyone says that too, but Washington softball is like no other. And
How important is, like, looking at all the teams you played on? I'm sure you played on a lot of teams, and even now after college, like culture, creating a culture within a team. How important is that to having success as a team, as an overall? And second part of that would be the experience of being on it. Like,
Yeah.
how important is that? And how do you create it, I guess, too?
yeah, I think Coach Tar did such a good job of creating that, but she kind of gave us the tools that we needed to create a good culture, like things like the Ken Revisa mindset stuff and a lot of references. She would pull up videos of like famous coaches talking about their teams, like a Nick Saban, people like that who have had success and what it took within their program to be successful. And it was always every year was different within like the team culture because it was so personal to like what would work. Like you don't want to go in with a blueprint and say, this is how team culture works. This is what's going to happen. It kind of happens organically. So,
You almost have to be flexible within it too, to move around. Have you ever been on a team that had a terrible culture?
I don't know about terrible.
Maybe terrible was a
but
strong
no,
word.
no, not like terrible. When I think terrible, I think like people fighting and stuff.
Right.
But I think there's a night and day difference between people who are there for each other and like want to win no matter what it takes versus people who are there as individuals and want to thrive for their stats or whatever. And that's like not to shun them, but it's just like you can very much feel that. And whenever you're on a team where everyone has each other's backs and you're just playing for a common goal, it's like, dude, it like fires me up. It's getting my heart rate going right now. But you just play ball and you're not thinking about literally anything else other than like, I need to perform for my pitcher right now. Like she's busting her butt and I want to have her back right here. And you just go to war with this group and it's insane.
Yeah. So I think that would actually answer my next question too, is like, so the common factor of maybe a team that doesn't have as good of a culture would be the more players playing for themselves versus playing for the team as a whole. How many players do you think it takes? And this is, I mean, we're just kind of spitballing here, but how many players do you think it takes to be, we'll call it selfish. It doesn't need to be selfish because, it just could be someone just thinking about their own, not being a bad person or anything, but how many players does it take to be have that attitude to ruin an entire culture?
One. Literally one. And it's crazy. Like, because you kind of move your energy from like this one collective goal. And especially like for me, not that there was anyone like this in Washington, but when you take on this leadership role, like for me, my 5th year, you're looking at like the big picture. Like, I don't care about my stats right now. I want us to win. And so you're like kind of overseeing what's going on and you want to like be there. And if something goes not how it's planned, like you have to now detour your energy into that person.
Yes.
And that's just throws off everything. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But
that's
just takes one.
It just takes one. I agree. I agree. With Washington being such a good fit for you, like if you could go back from your high school days and kind of identify, and you've already touched on a lot of it, but kind of more advice for young girls that are going through the recruiting process now, what would be a few things that you would identify as important factors when choosing a school that could determine whether it's a good fit for you or not?
I would for sure talk to the people within the program and kind of see what they say about it and like really take note of like how they're talking about it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that sounds so basic, but
I know exactly what you mean.
it's everyone, like every coach is going to put on their best face during recruitment. And that's not a bad thing because obviously you want your players, but everyone's going to show them their best self. You know what I mean? And yeah, I think I would just do all the research you can and make a list of things that you want within your future program. Like, who do you want to play for? What's the kind of person you're playing for? What's the team culture like? And school, like, what do I want to do? And I think people have this preset mind, like, I want to go to this school. And like, this isn't checking the boxes, which is fine, but you want to like go somewhere where you're going to thrive as a human. So
absolutely. Did you talk to girls on the University of Washington team, like as you were going through that, kind of getting their feel for how they are enjoying it, things like that? Did you do that, or was it more of just like staff within the team before you decided to go there?
I talked to some of the girls, but for me, it was very much evident in the way like Washington softball played, So like everyone who was on the team was super, super organically nice to me.
That's
and
cool.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
But you can always tell, like you pull up the 2019 national championship, Washington was playing, and you can just tell they play with so much passion and energy and just love. Like you'd make a play and everyone's hugging and stuff. Like it's just, you can see it. So like, of course I talked to the girls, but I felt it.
You knew it beforehand. You knew what they were going to say. So you graduate, you go to become, I think was it the second overall pick in the WPF, I believe, right? Which is amazing. You played there for a year with the Texas Smoke, won a championship. How was that experience? Kind of the first experience to pro softball. What was that like?
It was cool to get paid to play. That's for sure.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Fresh out of college, where you got your stipend, but you paid rent and all these things, and then now you're getting like your first big check. I was like, this is awesome. But to be honest, it was really, really, really hard going from college and then straight into 3-month season professionally, where professionally, like that year, we played almost every day.
Yeah.
In the scorching hot Texas weather. And like obviously so grateful for the opportunity, and I wouldn't have it any other way, but like playing for 6 months. And at this point, like going into my 5th year, I had been playing nonstop because in the summers I would play with USA, and then we'd start fall, and fall is intense workouts. And so I was just on the go. And then I got to pro softball, and I was like, bruh, this is a lot. My body hurts. I got like 50% of my juice in the tank.
Yeah.
But I think that's a cool thing too about just playing is you don't have to be at 100% all the time. It's just like knowing where you're at. And I performed well, not my best, but I did perform well, and we won.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was like, we finished the season. I was like, woohoo.
Did any of that kind of play? Because they have a longer season than AUX, right? So, and I'm going to have you explain all that, the AUX and then the new league. I think they're SL, right? And I'd like you to kind of walk me through that. But what were some of the factors of maybe wanting to switch from? Because I'm sure you had the opportunity to go back to the WPF, but what made you want to make the switch over to the AUX?
Yeah, I think just playing where it's the best of the best. And I know a lot of the girls, they play for different national teams and things like that. And there's super talented players in both leagues. But for me, with where I was at, I felt like for a minute, I kind of like plateaued a little bit. And that's not here nor there. It's just kind of like transferring. It's like my own personal, like, dude, something has to change. And there's things without, like, out of my control, like higher up outside of softball, that I was like, dude, this is not okay. Yeah. You see a big surge in women's sports and just fighting for certain things. And that was very much.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah,
do you mind elaborating on that? I mean, if you don't, you don't have to.
Of course. And now this is like getting to be a known thing. So I bet I have it in my notes. So for us to talk about. Yeah. But basically this past season, I didn't play with the WPF this past season, but there was like a scenario where like players weren't getting paid on a certain team, and they were fresh out of college. You don't have a big girl job yet, and they're struggling for groceries and things like that. And recently some of those girls came out and spoke about it, which is awesome because not a lot of people know what goes on. Oh, do you have it pulled up? Awesome.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to get your opinion on this.
Sorry, I'm like yapping about.
No, this is 100%. I think it's important to talk about. So do you have any other insight on this, or just, I mean, are you friends with anyone that is kind of going through this a little bit right now? Obviously, this is not the team that you played on, so this is not the smoke, but it did happen in the league. It looks like it's happening in the league that you were in. Were you aware of this stuff before, like you decided to go into the other league, where you kind of knew some things like this were happening within other teams?
Not this problem specifically, but I was aware that I didn't believe in the foundation that was being laid for that league to thrive.
League as a whole.
Yeah, and then I've heard nothing but amazing things about AU, and you've seen it in their numbers and viewership and contracts that they're doing something right. And I think in the past there's been a lot of efforts to make professional softball work, and it hits the fan almost every time. And I always say, like, I feel so much for the legends of softball who, like, some of them had just retired, like Haley McClinney, and just like wanting to see kind of the fruits of their labor thrive. Like, softball players deserve a professional softball league, you know what I mean? And
why do you think a lot of the efforts have failed over the years? Do you think there's a reason why? Is there something specific why you think?
I think that I don't know if people are going about it in like an organic, like, we want to grow the game of softball way. It's always about money, which I understand as a business, but for anything to like thrive, you want to build a good foundation, right? If the foundation is faulty, it's not going to work. And I think in all of the efforts that have failed, like, there hasn't been a good foundation, like a good plan to make it not about this one person who's like investing the money. It's about the players.
Right, getting the return on the investment, the business people trying to get the return on the investment versus having maybe the more long long-term goals, if this is where we want to be in 5-10 years, willing to kind of take the lumps and bruises in the beginning just to get to where they need to go. And it almost, I don't, again, you have a more personal experience with this, but it seems like the AU is really growing a ton and is, I mean, talking even about pay and just like really making it a much better experience and something that could grow. I mean, even just the fact that they're going to the AUSL, right? And that is basically a more long-term season, similar to what the WPF was doing, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So it'll be more traditional, like with teams instead of like, because right now it's the draft.
Right. Yeah. Could you explain to me how that, because I tried to like understand it. Someone explains to people, I need like a fully breakdown of what the AUX truly is and how it works.
Yeah. So basically it's based on like a point system. So if your team wins, that's a lot of points. But like if you get a single, it's plus 10 points. If you get a double, plus 20. And pitchers get points for, I can go about that for days. But it's a point system. And every week there's 4 captains. The captains are the leaderboard, like the people up there in the leaderboard. And they choose their team. They kind of build it fantasy league style. And then you play a series and then whoever's the captains the next week, they do it again, and it's fun.
Did you like that type of like I guess structure, like where you're playing with different girls each week? Because you play you play that full week with that group, right? And then the following week you would switch it up, they draft again, and then do it. Did you like that?
I did. I did like
really?
it. Yeah, it was fun, especially because it was a short time period, so it's not like this was going on for months and months. Of course, you want to have one team where you can like build those relationships and stuff, but the cool thing about AU is you get those opportunities to like gel with people, and even if you're not on the same team, you can still like hang out, whatever. But I think there's pros and cons. Of course, we love traditional softball, but it also made it quick, fast paced, and
it's almost like I mean, in college I remember, like fall ball, at the end of fall ball they'd like split the team and you do like a series against each other, and it's like you're all on the same team, but you're like, it was like a serious series and you wanted to win that, almost like something like that, which is kind of a fun concept. Are you going to do the AUSL as well as the? Okay, you're going to do both. So how long is that going to be for summer for you? How does the timeline work?
I think it'll be about a little over 2 months. It'll be the AUSL season, and then they're going to keep doing the regular AU non-traditional form. And it'll be called the champ season. So those still, because originally AU, I think, had the mindset of being like an all-star league kind of setup. But so I think that's the vision now that we're getting there.
Back on just this real quick, and I just want to, and then we'll close it out. But some of the girls that are kind of going through this with the WPF and that one team, has there been any progress as far as them getting what they were owed?
I'm not sure on that, but I do know a lot of people are talking about it, and a lot of different people are like starting to voice their concern, which is good, because that's the first step, is just talking about it.
Absolutely.
To get that recognition. So I think they're heading in a right direction to get what they deserve.
Yeah.
But
Well, that's good. I hope they do, for sure. I mean, for sure. Do you think there could be 2 successful professional softball leagues going on at the same time, or do you think it needs to be one?
I think it needs to be one. I think like maybe there could be different forms, like kind of a summer ball sort of vibe, where like maybe some college athletes come and play. I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but I do know like the softball players need to be in the same league for it to thrive. Like we can't keep going.
Right, because I'm sure there are some really great players, obviously, in the WPF that would also thrive in the AU, and almost, if you want the best of the best, you got to have, maybe one league could do that. It's interesting. It's exciting to see just the growth, though. Yeah. I mean, I think I looked up something with the AU last year, 2020. I want to say 2022. They had like an increase in like 70-something% in their viewership, and then from 22 to 23. It was like another 38% increase. I mean, that's big. That's really, really big. And I would imagine all that would result in better pay, more advertisers wanting to get involved in it, and everything like that, which would just really continue to help grow the game. I think, I didn't have this to talk about this, but I think if that's like what's happening in the WNBA right now, essentially, right? Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese, all these girls, like all of a sudden, and now all of a sudden it's becoming mainstream when the WNBA has been around for a long time and it wasn't really mainstream beforehand.
Right.
Like, but it feels like softball is starting to get that momentum a little bit as well.
For sure. And I think the cool thing is, especially with some of the veterans, like older girls, they're so badass in that they're willing to fight for what is deserved. And they're like, look, even if we're not going to play next year or whatever, like this needs to happen.
That's cool.
And I think that's such a big thing. And you see it, like you mentioned with WNBA and soccer, and there's so many women's leagues that are like starting to get the money they deserve, the means that need to be provided for them to like be able to continue playing. And the biggest thing is just standing up for like what we deserve and not just being grateful for the opportunity. Like, of course we're grateful for the opportunity, but some people were playing for like $1,000 playing for 3 months, like that's insane.
Yeah. That's
insane. Yeah. Being told like, well, be grateful that you have the opportunity to play professionally. And it's like, what? What? That's insane. But anyways, I think the conversations that are being had is amazing and heading in a better direction. Definitely.
And that's cool. Cause I think also with like, if you have I have a young daughter, 3 years old, she's super young, but you want her to have something to look up to if she chooses to go into softball, and that's a dream of hers. Baseball, you have that, right? You have guys that you idolize growing up, and you have Major League Baseball that you're like, oh, I just want to, whether you make it there or not, but there's somewhere to root or work towards, right? Yeah. And I feel like now college softball has been that for, I think. You tell me if I'm wrong, sure. But that is as big as it gets. But it is cool to see you're not necessarily getting paid for college softball, although with NIL you can now, I guess. Be interested to get your take on that. But it would be really cool to kind of see that grow to a point where now young girls are like, man, I want to go here in the AU because there's a financial benefit to go there. There's recognition. There's brand deals that now I can get because I'm getting exposure. I think it's important, and I feel like it is starting to happen with a lot of women's sports, and it's neat to see softball do the same thing. Now with the NIL, just because I thought of it, were you able to benefit from any of that at all when you were in college?
I did, but for me specifically, there was no way I could juggle like taking NIL super seriously, taking academics super seriously, and softball. So I think it just depends on like what you can handle, but I was like, I can't deal with all that. I need to like focus on school and softball. And there were some awesome opportunities that I did go through with, but like in terms of checking my DMs for brand deals and stuff like that, I was like, I cannot do this right now.
Did some of the players that you play with, was that like that they did kind of were able to leverage that and really, that's kind of neat. Did they have to go after it themselves, or was it more, it was just kind of coming to them and they were accepting opportunities?
Yeah, I think it was a good mix. Some people will kind of take the route of an influencer while they're playing and really like show the behind the scenes, which people love. And that gives them good opportunities. For me in college, I didn't really like post things like that. And I just played, and that was kind of my brand, is
right. Play. You're
playing.
Play.
But I think both are great, and there's a lot of opportunities with NIL, so that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. For
what
men.
do you think? What do you think about NIL? People have.
I think it's good. I think it's good. I think, like anything, my opinion is that it could have problems, but I think the biggest concern is, taking away the stuff that you were just talking about, the stuff that you loved about Washington, as far as the team, the all playing for each other, versus, maybe to get exposure so that you can make money on this thing over here. I guess that would be the concern. But I still think it's good because I think like especially, you know, men's sports, these football teams and all these, they're making so much money. And I feel like if people are making money off your name, you've earned the right to get a cut of that.
Right.
I think that's fair.
It's,
You know, I mean, it doesn't seem like,
just,
it's not like rocket science. I mean, again, I do think there's some things that come along with it that I don't necessarily love, but ultimately, you know, I think you've earned the right. If you know, if there's jerseys that are going with your name on it and they're selling them, like, well, that's my name. Like I should get some benefit from that.
right. Yeah.
You know?
I think if there was two people in a room, one was super pro NIL and the other person hated it and they went at it, I would be like, yeah, from both sides, just going back and forth. Because I think there's really no like map for it, you know?
Yeah. I think that we're gonna, you know, over these next, because obviously some of these, they're getting paid a lot of money, right? And I think it also creates a lot of villains, quote unquote. Like I think of in football, and like there's some guys that are getting paid like crazy amounts of money, and now people, because they know they're making tons of money. When you're in professional sports and people make tons of money, that's how people dislike you if you don't perform well. And like, there's this other element. It's like, well, you're making X, Y, Z, you should be doing this. I think that's going to come down to the college level, which is, which I'm not sure is great for, you know, young college athletes to be put underneath that scrutiny. But because the NIL now they are, I mean, I think it was Deion Sanders is his son. They were just talking about that, and Deion was kind of like scolding the reporters, is like saying, hey, this guy's he's not a professional. Yeah, you do this to professionals. You could criticize. You know, my son's not a professional. He's a college athlete. And part of me, like, I understand what he's saying, but the other part of me is like, well, he's getting paid like professional. Right. You know? Yeah. So does that open him up to now have the same scrutiny that, you know, if you are, you know, any type of big time NFL player, that's going to get the same scrutiny if he throws an interception, that, you know, like, are you now opening yourself up to that? And I'm not sure college athletes I don't know, is that a good thing for them to be put under? Again, I still think the pros way out for more than NIL. I would still always lean towards that, but I do think it creates a lot of other potential issues. Right. One of those, that one being one of them. For sure. You know? I think it's wild, honestly. Like, it's just such a untamed beast. It NIL. Is. They're just like, oh, you can get paid now. Woo! Okay, we're out. Like some of these, some people are getting like Lamborghinis or rolling up to class in Lamborghinis. It's crazy. You know, yeah, I think it'll end up working itself out. The other thing is the people who are really being affected, it's such a small percentage. You know. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think we get people all the time reach out to us for NIL deals. It's like, hey, you know, I'm going to so-and-so school. You know, I'm looking for, you know, just opportunities for businesses, and it's great. And we're flattered by that. And we're honestly, but I mean, that kid's not making $1 million right from the NIL. Yeah. But how cool of a benefit for him if he does partner with a company and he's getting some free stuff, he's getting a benefit from that. He's not being penalized from NCAA because of that. Like, that's a cool thing too, for right? Sure. So even the issues that I see, I still think the issues are for such a small percentage. Yeah. You know? I think that was maybe, I mean, I don't know, I don't work for NCAA, but I think that was the goal, to be like, look, if you want a little extra something, like for your local, like, family food place in your university town, like whatever. Yeah. Or like a free bat or free whatever. I think maybe that was the goal, but because there was no like maybe like rules necessarily, it kind of got crazy. But I think what's crazy is like the portal and NIL conversation together, like people transferring because they're not getting enough money or whatever. That's an interesting conversation. Yeah. Did you see that one? I didn't read the full article, but that football player that transferred like mid-season, there was a football player. I can't think of the name of the school. I feel like it was a quarterback. Right? Yeah. He like transferred like within like first 3 or 4 games of the season. He transferred because he said that like he didn't get the amount of money that he was owed in NIL or something along those lines, like transfer middle. So again, there's another issue that wasn't there before NIL, and it's an interesting thing. It's just crazy. Yeah. It's just wild. And then also, I think I saw something of Dave Portnoy said he's like, I'll give X amount of dollars for Michigan to have, to win a championship every year to a quarterback. Like,
Mm-hmm.
basically I'll just give whatever it is. Cause then you got people like that. They're alumni of a school and they'll say, hey, listen, they're successful. Open up the checkbook.
Yeah.
And ultimately, again, I mean, it's cool for a kid to be able to have that opportunity. And it's still such a small percentage of kids that are actually getting that opportunity.
Right.
And the ones that do, they're probably good enough to deserve it, but if you're on that team and that kid's getting, $3 million or whatever it is, and you're trying to get, a free glove from someone,
Right.
Is there any resentment towards the kid that's getting $3 million?
Yeah.
How does that do to a team culture? I don't know. I guess unless you're in, I've been a long time since I've been in a college locker room, and it wasn't there when I was there, and my school wasn't going to be doing it anyway. So it definitely is an interesting conversation. I think overall, though, I think it's a net positive.
For sure.
I think it's a good thing for players. You did a home run derby thing, didn't you, with MLB?
I did. Yeah, that was
Can you
sick.
explain that and tell me what that experience was like? Because that seems amazing.
Crazy. It was so fun. So there was like, I think 4 groups of 4 hitters basically, and there was like some guys who used to play in the MLB, and basically on every team there was 2 baseball players and 2 softball players.
Okay.
Or maybe the one that I went to, I think it was 1 softball player, but everyone had to have a softball player, which is really cool.
That's neat.
But yeah, then you get up there and it's like a traditional home run derby, and your team just goes and you go head to head with another team and see.
Wow. Where did you do yours?
I did mine. Oh my gosh, where was it? I want to say it was somewhere in Tennessee.
Okay. So it was like a one-time event? Did they do it like multiple times over the year, or like?
So it's the home run derby X. They like travel, and it's like a traveling thing where it's getting pretty big actually.
That's cool.
But it was an awesome opportunity, and the fans loved it.
Will you ever do it again?
Hopefully, yeah. Yeah, it was super fun. And it was so light, like there was no pressure. You just go out there and it was a fun environment.
Yeah. This is the last thing I would talk about, and we can kind of wrap it up because I'm sure we could talk for a long time. But 2028, we have the Olympics. Softball's back in the Olympics. How important is that to the growth of softball as well?
Oh my gosh, it's like we got to have the growth to be successful, and I think that it being voted back in is amazing because I don't know why it was ever voted back out.
Why?
But,
do you know why? Like why? I've never understood that.
Yeah, so
we had breakdancing in the last one.
Yeah,
so like
they actually came to talk to us about it to kind of help us understand. So basically, wherever the Olympics are hosted, that country is kind of like the voice of, like obviously whatever country is hosting, they want their teams to be as successful as possible. So it's like also about viewership and all these things, but what is going to get the most traction and whatever else in that specific area. Yeah. Anyways, but there's a vote every year for certain things to be in, out, whatever. And softball was voted out, and baseball, because they're like a package deal.
That's right. What country was that was voted out that year? I don't remember. Do you know which one it was? I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter, but I'd be interested because I never understood why it left.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
But also it's crazy too, because I think it seems like a no-brainer because we're directly kind of affected, because it's always, I feel like, Japan and USA and Italy, Australia, like the same 4 teams, Canada, that are like always so good. Yes. And they just go head to head, and but anyways, the growth of softball is happening at the right time, because ramping up for that, we need to get a win for USA.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but
so how important is it for you to make that team?
It's super important. I think that's a lifelong dream, of course. I think it's really cool and scary also navigating it at this time in my life, because what would have been perfect if it was in this year.
Right. Yeah, right.
So I could pursue that and kind of go with the flow, whatever 28 brings me. Like, I would love to play again if that's what my body is wanting me to do or whatever. But yeah, I think it's year by year for sure. I want to play for as long as I can. And
you've already been through the tryout process for Team USA, obviously multiple times. How stressful is that?
It's stressful for sure. But I think it felt stressful whenever I was younger.
Yeah.
And now it's still stressful in different ways, but I kind of put less pressure on myself because I kind of understand the game and just how it's not personal, whatever happens. And I'm going to show up with my best. And if I'm the right fit for the team, then amazing. That's a dream. But
it's probably the dream of every young softball
100%.
player. You know, I can't imagine anything probably better than that. That's cool. Okay, so why don't we wrap up on? You have one piece of advice. It could be anything. It could be on anything. It could be soft related, not soft related, life related, for a young softball player. Just any piece of advice that you would want to share with them.
I would say really get to know yourself, and not in a way that's only related to softball. Get to know what you like, what you enjoy, your personality traits, what makes you mad, what makes you happy. Just like really understand who you are to your core. So when you get around different environments or you get put in different situations, you're not so shooken up. And I think that's something I learned throughout college and just playing in different environments is like, if I didn't have a solid foundation and know who I was, then I would start to like get in my own head. Like, am I not this enough? Am I not that enough? You know what I mean?
Self-doubt.
Yeah, exactly. And knowing kind of what I bring to the table and my strengths, like, played such a big role in not only my play, but just my confidence and trusting that, like, I have what it takes. And also the self-awareness to know, like, okay, I'm not good at this one thing, or I'm not good at this thing, but that's okay because I'm good at these other things. And, of course, that's going to help you in softball, but in life, too.
Yes.
Like, that helps in school and this. Like, you learn what makes you tick, and that's, like, my biggest advice. Like, sit down with a journal. There's literally, like, journal prompts on Google. Like, Google journal prompts to write about myself. Like, and it could be, like, the last time you tried something for the first time. What is it? Write about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just learn about yourself, because I think that's kind of not only like essential, but it's kind of like a lost art. Like, people just are so influenced, like, and I'm influenced too, like everyone's influenced, but we're living in an era where like there's so many trends and so many things that can kind of sway you different ways.
Man, that is phenomenal advice. And not to, because again, we could probably talk for another hour on this, but I think especially with social media and young, boys or girls, trying to not knowing themselves, then turns into them trying to be what they think others want them to be, which then leads to a whole nother slew of problems.
Right.
Whether it becomes, just being so worried and anxiety, and then it turns into depression, and it could be so many other things. And I think if you were to root it back, it kind of like what your advice was is like really kind of yourself. And knowing yourself, I think, brings also a certain level of confidence. And then now you're not swayed by, someone thinking that, thinking a certain way about you. You're not so swayed because you know who you are. That's like really, I think that's a perfect way.
Yeah.
And that's really, really good advice. I love that. Well, if you enjoyed the podcast, feel free to like and subscribe. We'd love to do that. And then keep you up to date with everything else that we're doing. And until next month, God bless.